Welcome to A Day in Her Life podcast. I'm your host, Ellie Rinnick, and I'm fascinated by how other women make their days work. On today's episode, Amanda Mitchell, owner of everyone's favorite stores in Charlestown, Place and Gather and Junebug, as well as the president of the Charlestown Business Alliance, joins us to talk about her days. Amanda and I chat about her journey into entrepreneurship, how she wasn't always a small business owner, and how she came to own a florist just a short time after opening Place and Gather. We also discuss how she's an early riser, loves to chat with her sister on her commute between the stores, and prioritizes being home by 5 to spend time with her daughter, but has to buffer in time to her commute to say hi to those she passes on the street. Amanda also shares the power of having a strong team around you and how delegation can be a form of self-care. A huge thank you to Amanda for being a guest on today's episode. If you're in the Boston area, be sure to check out Junebug and Place and Gather in Charlestown. All right, let's have some fun. Welcome to A Day in Her Life podcast. Today, Amanda Mitchell is joining me to discuss a day in her life. Hi, Amanda. Thanks so much for joining me today.
It's my pleasure. I'm so happy to be here, Ellie.
How is your day going?
So far, it's so good. Luckily, we had this podcast scheduled for the morning, which made my morning a little bit faster because everybody wanted to leave my house so that they weren't in the way.
That's awesome. I'm glad I could help facilitate everyone getting you some free time.
It was great. So if you want to do this again, I'm available.
Awesome. So let's jump right in. So if you wouldn't mind filling us in on where you live, what you do, and what your family looks like.
Yeah, absolutely. So I live in Charlestown in Boston, Massachusetts. I am married to my husband, Jason. We've been married for 9 years, which feels like a very long time now. We have an almost 3-year-old named Maya, who is extremely spunky and energetic. And I own Place and Gather, which is a lifestyle and gift boutique, and Junebug, which is a boutique and full-service florist that does weddings and events. And I am also the president of the Charlestown Business Alliance here.
Oh, that's awesome. Something that I've known because I've been a longtime follower of yours is that you weren't always a small business owner. Would love to hear how you kind of got into owning Place and Gather and Junebug from your previous career.
Absolutely. So I was indeed not always a small business owner. I was a 3rd grade teacher in Chelsea, Massachusetts before all of this happened. And I knew I was ready to make a change career-wise. Wasn't sure exactly what that was going to look like. I have always loved decorating, shopping, reorganizing my spaces at home, and initially thought, maybe I will do some sort of an online boutique centered around tablescapes or setting a table, because I figured if I did something online, it wouldn't have a lot of startup costs. And I lived in a small city apartment, and I felt like my table always needed to look kind of set because it was part of our very small living area. So that was my first idea. I eventually stopped teaching. My school was really good to me. They let me go back part-time, and I ended up doing like some coaching of new teachers while I started on this new path. And that gave me some structure in my morning. And then I had the afternoon to think about what I was going to do. I ended up going to a trade show in Atlanta called America's Mart, the biggest gift show that there is. And I got there and I was looking around, and I immediately knew that there was so much product that Charlestown needed to be able to buy. And I love people, so doing something online might not have been the best idea, just a strictly online business. I came back and I was like, I just need to make this into a store. And I can focus on some tabletop gift stuff, but that seemed like the right move. So I eventually ended up finding a retail space here, which is very lucky because Charlestown has such limited retail space. And my landlord at Place and Gather took a chance on me having no experience and being a teacher. And I ended up signing a lease in April of 16? 17. It's been 6 years, so however many years that is. And I 17. I need to know these things off the top of my head. But I ended up opening up, and Place and Gather was born. I opened up on Bunker Hill Day, which is a very popular day here because I knew people would be walking around the neighborhood. So someone would have to walk by this space. Place and Gather is on the Freedom Trail. It's by the Bunker Hill Monument. But all of my neighbors are neighbors. They're not commercial spaces or stores. So it's an interesting place to bring in foot traffic because it's a beautiful location, but I don't have any store neighbors. And it's the end of the Freedom Trail. So a lot of times, by the time tourists make it to the monument, they want to go have a beer at the Warren Tavern and they're hot and tired and they don't necessarily want to shop. So it's a really interesting little space. I'm so happy to be there, but that's how Place and Gather was born. When I opened, started immediately listening to a lot of customer feedback. I had a lot of tabletop product and I had kind of run with this idea of setting a table. People came in and they just kept asking for hostess gifts. So I started kind of changing up my ideas a little bit based on daily customer feedback and kind of have transitioned into a gift and lifestyle boutique. And by lifestyle, it's a very broad term, but earrings, accessories.
Charlestown hats.
The Charlestown flag hat, which has become our staple. And when I think about the fact that I wanted to open it as like a high-end tabletop boutique, and now we sell more baseball hats than anything. It's so funny, but it was a customer's husband who had this idea of a needlepoint flag hat. So I give Brian all my credit for that. But it just showed me that the neighborhood here wanted neighborhood product, and people love Charlestown. People that live in Charlestown love Charlestown. It's a very proud neighborhood, which is also why I wanted to open my store here. I had lived here already for 6 or 7 years. And I love Charlestown, so I wanted to stay here. And it's ended up morphing. Place and Gather feels like a Charlestown neighborhood store. And I was a cheerleader, so I feel like there's a lot of spirit that goes along with my cheerleading side of me loves being a part of all this anyways. So I feel like the flag hat is kind of my, way of embracing my inner cheerleader and Charlestown spirit.
I love that. I definitely think when I think of a store in Charlestown, your stores, Place and Gather and Junebug are kind of the two that I think of. When did Junebug open in relation to opening Place and Gather?
So Junebug is such a funny story. I had been open for not even a year at Place and Gather, which was a year of having been a teacher to a store owner, which was plenty of
transition.
Just being thrown in to the fire, which I elected to do so. But we were approached by Bunker Hill Florist that had been a florist in Charlestown for 37 years. There's 2 gentlemen that owned it, and they were interested in retiring and moving out of Charlestown and wanted somebody to buy it, run it, keep it a florist, keep it a neighborhood spot, and asked if we would be interested. And I immediately was like, absolutely not. I'm already busy enough. I don't know what I'm doing. Place and Gather was going along great. We were picking up some steam. We were, but I also know that I know what I don't know. And I thought that this was going to be a little bit much. But then I thought about it with my husband, with my family. We thought about if I looked back and didn't decide to do this, how that would feel. I ironically had listened, I'm a big podcast listener. I listened to a How I Built This podcast from the people that started Warby Parker. And there was some quote in there, which I have in a binder somewhere else, but I don't have it actively in front of me right now. But just about knowing the difference between luck and being lucky to see an opportunity and take it. And that was in this podcast I was listening to. I was thinking all of this and I was like, you know what? We're just going to go for it. We're going to run a florist. So that is what we did. The gentleman that owned it wanted to keep the name Bunker Hill Florist so they could still use all of their pre-existing stuff if they wanted to do more weddings not out of a retail space, but on their own. They still wanted to go to the flower market. They could just still be that. I wanted to change nothing because I didn't want to leave people confused, and eventually kind of rebrand it. But we ended up rebranding it immediately to Junebug, which was my childhood nickname. I was born in June. It seemed like a very floral plant, cute name. We retained all the staff. We closed on Junebug, let's say on a Tuesday. I don't remember what day of the week it was. And on Wednesday, we opened with just business as usual. Kept the same computer system, same way of doing things, same everything, and kept everybody employed, which was why we didn't close. I am not a florist. Now, technically, I am a florist, but I was not. So I couldn't lay off people. I couldn't have no employees. I didn't know how to do this job. So we had to keep people paid. It's like a very unsettling thing when your business sells and you're up in the air. You don't know what's happening. So we just kept everything going as it had the day before. It was a really fast transition. A lot of customers didn't know it was necessarily happening. The employees didn't have a lot of time to know it was happening. So it was a very unsettled time, but we got through it. And it was the biggest learning curve of my entire life. I thought Place and Gather was, but it turns out that owning a florist is far more challenging. Not more challenging, but a lot more, there's just so much more to it. So
that's so cool. It's an interesting diversification of your businesses.
Yes. And it was something I had never planned on, which I also think is so funny. When I made the leap to open Place and Gather, people were like, well, what if this doesn't work out? What if, most businesses fail within blah, blah, blah. And it's like, well, by year 2, we had somehow acquired a florist. So we're moving in the other direction.
That's so funny. So Amanda, would you take us through a day in your life? Start us off with kind of how your mornings go. What time do you get up? What do your mornings look like in your house?
So I am an early riser. I always have been. My college roommate still will text me or DM me on Instagram if I post something really early in the morning. And she's like, I knew you when you were in college and you still always got up early. So my ideal wake up time is 5:15. I probably am a weirdo, but I love to be up early. I do not set an alarm. I naturally wake up at that time. I do go to bed early. So I think that's part of it. But I enjoy being up before everyone is up. I do my best thinking in the morning. I like to come downstairs, collect my thoughts, make coffee, and kind of sometimes lay out my day. It's a little early for that, but I find that it's quiet. Our daughter was I would say she was a great sleeper up until like 3 weeks ago when she started trying to climb out of her crib and we transitioned her into a big girl bed. And the big girl bed transition it's like not even a transition. It's just not even working. It's just a nightmare. So she used to be a solid, like she'd get up at 7:30, sometimes 6:30, but not quite. So I had some time in the morning. Now a lot of times she's up with me when I come downstairs. So what I ideally or used to do is lay out my day. I try a couple times a week. A couple times might be being generous, but to do a Pilates workout. Sometimes I go in person outside this time of year. My instructor that I absolutely adore, Jen Phelan, teaches at the Bunker Hill Monument in the mornings. Or she has a video library of 1 million classes, and I love to do her video library. I sometimes do a 10, 15-minute class. This is not it's not an hour thing. Luckily, my daughter will do part of them with me, so we do them together every so often. She enjoys that, so I've kind of incorporated her into my morning routine in the workout part because she is a high-energy child, so she doesn't mind doing that. And then my husband and I switch on and off. We are lucky enough to have a nanny, and she comes at 9. So Jason hangs with Maya for half the time. I hang with Maya the other half of the time. He usually takes her outside on a walk, plays with her, does whatever, and I do whatever. If they took a walk outside, I play with her inside, feed her something, and basically get ready for our nanny to come. when I have my time getting ready in the morning, putting on my makeup, doing my hair, I like to listen to a podcast, even if it's 10, 15 minutes. I love to listen to, well, you, obviously, Ellie, have been first and foremost, but I have been listening. I always listen to like an Adam Grant podcast. I love Mel Robbins. It all depends on how I'm feeling. I have listened to, there is a TED Talk by Sean Acor who studies happiness. I think it's like The Secret to Happiness at Work. It is a TED Talk. I have listened to it maybe 30 or 40 times. Sometimes when I'm looking to feel motivated, I just put it on. I love him. I've consumed all of like books that he has written, any podcast he has been on, I listen to. I love to start my day listening to somebody else, some fresh perspective, a different idea, some thought leaders. It just feels highly motivating to me, even if it's for only 10 minutes. So that's what I do while I'm getting ready. And then when our nanny gets there, Jason and I rejoice because our daughter is obsessed with her. We always feed her something in the morning, but our nanny cooks her breakfast. She's a better cook than us. So Maya waits until she gets there. She kind of has like a yogurt or a breakfast snack until our nanny arrives because she is not interested in what we cook.
That's hilarious.
It's terrible. Yeah.
I had the opposite experience with my nanny growing up. She would set off the fire alarm. She was a terrible cook, but we loved her so much.
Yeah, you can't win them. Like you can't be perfect in every aspect, but luckily ours is a great cook. So
that's awesome.
So then once 9:00 rolls around, I try to be pretty respectful of everyone's time that works with us. I have a phenomenal manager. We also have somebody that manages our flowers, weddings, and events. I have a couple of management positions within the store, which are great because I can defer a lot to these people. But Liz, who's my manager, she's technically our operations person. I always communicate with her in the morning. Something she has set up, which has been so helpful, is we have a shared note on our phones.
Mm-hmm.
So we both can edit it, but we also don't need to text or call each other all the time. So if I think of something at 5 a.m. when I'm awake, I just throw it in there. And that's our shared to-do list. We put things that we need to inventory on there, different buying meetings we have, things that are in progress that we're working on and we kind of know the status of, our long-term goals, our things we want to punt to next year, all in one shared document, which has been fantastic. We also have a shared Google Doc of our goals, of what we have store goals, personal goals, professional goals, and we have made it a goal to review the goals more. So we get together quarterly just to talk about them. But I look at them, I would say, weekly and take things from there and put them on our to-do list. So we've actually started accomplishing bigger goals a lot faster because we've prioritized them. And I believe that is because we have some good managerial people in positions at work that make this possible. So we've got our joint list on our note, we've got our Google Doc, and then I have started time blocking my days. I don't love calendars on my phone, even though I do have plenty of calendars for staffing and events and all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But I have a time blocked calendar that I have made up myself on my computer. I print it out and I fill things in based on times. And if I can't fit it in, it gets moved to another day. But I try to not over schedule myself because I have been an overscheduler in the past.
Mm-hmm.
And Liz, my manager, and I try to be super mindful of how long tasks actually take, which I think has been so beneficial in our efficiency, is we don't allocate 30 minutes for something that's going to take 2 hours. And we're pretty mindful that we might work on something that takes 4 hours, and we don't try to squeeze more things in around it if that's not going to make sense. We also give ourselves time. Like if something is so big and cumbersome, we do it when we're fresh in the morning. We take a lot of time and we try to be thoughtful instead of scrambling. I do credit Liz with a lot of my just like, she's so organized and it's kept us organized and from being super reactive. my goal is to be as proactive as possible and think things through before we do them. So that has kind of made our mornings feel like we get up, we have a solid plan, we get to work. The stores are open from 10 to 6 during the week. So our staff reports before that. Our floral team goes to the flower market early in the morning. So sometimes by 9 a.m., they've already been there and they're on their way back. All kind of depends. But we have multiple people starting at different times. So Liz and I connect in the morning. And then when I leave for my not far commute to work, I either start my day at Junebug or Place and Gather, but I give my sister a call while I walk. And that's kind of the time I try to check in with her. It's not a long conversation because I live and work in the same community. Yes. But my sister is a news anchor and she is on the news at night. So our schedules overlap. Like she might work till, I don't know, midnight, 1 a.m. So her mornings, I'll have to sleep in when that happens. So it seems like my walk to work time is a kind of a good time. Don't always talk to her for as long as I would like to, but I try to make that's my check-in with my sister.
Does your sister live nearby? Or
she lives in Pittsburgh. Yeah. So I wish she lived closer, but she's not that far, which is good.
You said you and Liz connect in the morning. Do you usually connect while you're still at home? And then how does that determine where you start your day too, in terms of Junebug or Place and Gather?
So usually we make that determination at the night before. Okay. But it all depends on what has happened overnight. If there's anything that could change where we begin, because we might get a last minute flower delivery or flower order, or one of us needs to go in the van with one of our florists to help deliver something. We try to be organized enough to know where we begin and not make pure chaos as we have begun the beginning of our day. But that being said, we do own a florist, so things can be crazy. But I usually text or talk to her on the phone before I leave my house.
Okay.
I try to not inundate her, but I do think we are really good at communicating. We both enjoy over communicating, I believe, and that kind of sets us up for success. We don't have Place and Gather is so small and there's no meeting space. There's a tiny back room and that's kind of it. So a lot of times we do all of our meetings in the back of Junebug because we have a space with a desk. Sometimes it's filled with inventory like it is right now because we've started to receive all of our holiday inventory. Oh, yeah. So right now you get to pick a box and it's your stand-up desk, but we frequently meet there because we have space. Gotcha. There's no space at Place Together.
And when do you end your day? How do you wrap your day usually?
So our stores close at 6, but I have learned that the time between dinner time, bath time, bedtime is a quick amount of time. Well, it doesn't feel like it's a quick amount of time, but it's only a couple hours. So I try to be home and out of the stores home by 5 at least. Our nanny leaves at 5. We have thought many times about pushing her later, but I have decided that it is a good idea for me to prioritize being home by then instead of having my nanny just stay longer. So my day might wrap up I try to wrap it up a little bit before 5 because when I walk home, I typically see somebody I know. So I end up getting in a conversation with somebody. So I give myself a long time to walk home, even though I don't live far. Because there's always somebody, when we're doing, let's say someone's wedding in a couple months and I see them on the street, I'm not going to just casually wave and keep walking. I stop and talk. And I love that. I think it's really important to be a part of your community. So I am definitely part of this community. And so I kind of allocate time for that.
That's so fun. Charlestown definitely has that feel of so many neighbors walking around and like everyone seeing each other on the street.
Yes. And I think we have the Bunker Hill Monument. There's some parks here. A lot of people are outside. Their homes aren't that big. Mm-hmm. So it makes it feel very communal.
Yeah. It has that special place feel.
Yes, I think so too.
So you try to be home by 5. Does your husband work from home or does he typically go into the office? somewhere, or does he work with you? What does that look like?
Yeah. So a lot of people think Jason works with me. He does not. He's in business development. He works ironically now in Charlestown, but he has a hybrid situation. He can go into the office every day. He can work from home whenever he wants. But he wanted to have a job where he could still go into an office. I think we both thrive when we can talk to people, be around, like in an upbeat environment. So Jason works from home sometimes and works in the office sometimes. When he works in the office, he definitely loses track of time and he has to get home. So I make sure I'm always here at the end of the day, just because I think that's such a way I can continue to have balance for myself. And I have plenty of employees at both stores. So it also reminds me I can continue to leave other people in charge. It does not need to be me.
That's a helpful reminder in so many different scenarios. That was actually something a coworker told me when I was first starting. He was leaving our company and he said to all of us, he said, "You are replaceable," which felt, this isn't the same scenario, but like it doesn't have to be you doing it. And
no,
it was a way, when he said that, I was kind of offended. I was like, what do you mean? But then like the more that I've grown into the business world, that has always stuck with me. Like it doesn't have to be you, even when it feels like it does sometimes.
No, and what I've learned too is when I am not there, people do my jobs sometimes way better than me. I'm not the only one that can do things. And also people like to be left with some responsibility and they know you trust them. So I think it's been beneficial. I leave, but people can also step up and do whatever they'd like to do. We also have a really good staff of people. So that also helps.
It makes it easy. Yeah.
It does. They do make it easy.
So what does your early evening and dinner to bedtime time frame look like once you get home?
So we try to cook as much as possible. Sometimes we get food delivered. We do go out to dinner. It's a little bit harder now because Maya's either excellent at a restaurant right now or not excellent at a restaurant right now. But because I own businesses here, I like to support our restaurants. And we also love the people that own the restaurants here. We've got a good group. They're everywhere in Charlestown is child friendly too, no matter what you're eating, which feels lucky. So we go out to dinner a decent amount, I would say, or get things delivered. But we've been trying to be better about cooking. Now that Maya's pickier, it's nice to be home sometimes because we can give her a couple different options as we're in the toddler eating phase of just trying to get her to eat anything when it's not our nanny cooking for her and it's us. But basically we eat as a family. I would say we eat together as a family every single night, unless one of us is traveling, which is not frequent, which feels very lucky. And that's definitely a post-COVID thing. I feel like Jason would have been traveling a lot more if we were in a different day and age, but he does not travel that much. So that's fantastic. And then we spend time playing, coloring, going outside again, taking a walk, whatever. And then do bath time. And we spend a lot of time after bath time trying to get Maya to go to bed. So we might read 400 books, which should really only be one or two, but she is lively and we also are not with her all day long. So I feel like we're making up for some lost time. But there's a lot of playing and reading and trying to get her wrangled into her big girl bed.
It's such a transition.
It is. And I just didn't know that sleep would be hard now. Like I thought, just so ignorant that it would just get like easier. It's just getting harder.
We got lucky. My son is a very big rule follower. He's
okay.
And when we got him his big kid bed, it was right when we were transitioning to having a second child. And so we tried to do it beforehand. And we set like the get ready to wake light. We hyped up this bed like so much. Yep. This kid didn't know he could get out of his own bed for like, I think 6 months. And when he finally realized it, he was like, oh, he still doesn't get out of it very often. Like he'll play in his room and get into bed himself now. It took us a long time to get there.
Yeah.
but it was definitely a transition. And I think his rule following nature kind of helped us in that regard.
Yeah. Well, we also did, it was a very big problem. My husband turns 40 next week, and we had a surprise. I planned a surprise 40th birthday for him. And that was the day he took apart the crib and made it a big girl bed. He didn't know it was a surprise party for him, and I did not want to ruin the surprise. So the first night of her going into this bed, we were not home because we were at his surprise party. So I feel like we hyped it up, but it didn't get teed up the way we had envisioned. So I think it's just been a sinking ship ever since then.
The best laid plans.
Yeah. So
after you get Maya down, what does your evening look like with your husband?
So right now, by the time we get her to bed, sometimes I go right to bed. That is not what I want to do, but she has been waking up so much in the middle of the night that I just surrender and go to bed. Because I do know she'll be up again, and she might be up in the morning pretty early. My ideal thing would be to go back downstairs, sit and watch some TV, or I'm not a big TV watcher, but if Jason watches TV or a movie, I'll read a magazine, look at my phone, try not to be on social media too much. We use it so much for the stores that I try not to use it all the time. That being said, I still do. So we kind of sit together on the couch, and then I always go to bed earlier, but I always have. It's because I get up at 5:15.
Yeah. What do you do during the day for yourself?
So I feel like I try to do things like prioritize what I don't want to do, which might not necessarily be for myself. But I pass off things to other people that I might find cumbersome or weigh me down a little bit. I do enjoy, my commute is not far, but walking to the stores, or if I have to go between both stores, even if I need to bring stuff with me, I take a walk and sometimes listen to a podcast again, but kind of try to continue to take things off my plate would be, I would say, what I do for myself. Besides that, I'm not sure what else. I do sometimes try to pack my lunch, which feels like a victory. That's probably just like how you normally are supposed to live, but I'm trying to be organized enough where I don't feel like I'm behind. And like by the time we're really working at a project, I need to go order lunch or something.
Or then you realize it's 2 p.m. and you haven't eaten, and it's no one's happy.
And now I'm going to mess up dinner and whatever. So I just try to be a little bit more mindful of myself.
That makes sense. What do you do for creativity during your day? I think probably owning a business probably has a lot of creative aspects, but how would you describe the creativity you find in your day?
So luckily, our stores are both so creative. And a couple years ago, one of our big goals was to work on our merchandising and make our store displays and windows more attractive. So we spend a lot of time brainstorming what the store windows are going to look like, what new product is going to come, putting together, like, this is what this vignette's going to be. And then we pass it along to, we have some great people that on our team that love to do the merchandising. So that's their job. Liz and I don't do it. I don't do it. But I like to buy a lot of the stuff that goes into the windows, and then they put it together. And then I don't make the florals, obviously, but we might brainstorm what we're going to do for something. We have an event in May here called May Day, and we make a floral bench that's just for the neighborhood. So like before that, we have brainstorming meetings about the colorways and what we want this to be like and whatever, or different holiday events that we're going to do. There's a lot of brainstorming and creativity in what we do. So I feel like that I love that part of it all. There's a lot of big thinking and plans, and these are just really creative stores with it's a group of creative people. So I feel like that need of mine is always completely satisfied.
That's awesome. And we talked a little bit about this before we started, but kind of how would you describe your hobbies, and how have they dovetailed kind of into what you're doing?
Yeah, so it's funny because my hobbies have my hobby of, I loved redecorating and arranging things and redoing my spaces, and that just became Place and Gather. I feel like what was in my head just is now my store. And I've always loved flowers. I love plants. I love house plants so much. And then that just became Junebug. So it's funny because now sometimes they're definitely not hobbies anymore. They are businesses, obviously, but there's still different things that I like about it that can feel like hobbies sometimes. But I love antiquing. I've always liked antiquing, but now owning stores, I can almost predict what people might sell based on knowing what's available and going to the gift shows and all the markets and stuff. So I like antiquing because I never know what I'm going to find. I like a mix of new and old things in our house, and I like the discovery. And getting back to the creativity, which ties back into the stores. Now when I go antiquing, I luckily can buy large things to use as displays, which usually, like, if I pick something up and I'm like, oh my God, Jason is going to lose his mind if I bring this home. He really wouldn't. But I'm like, oh, well, that doesn't matter. I can just put it in Junebug and we can make a display out of this gigantic bird cage, which I have accumulated a lot of bird cages because I like them. I cannot, where are they going to go in my home? But they're all over Junebug now. So, but that's, I think one of my biggest hobbies is like, I like antiquing and exploring new areas.
That's awesome. And it's so cool that that can dovetail kind of into your everyday now.
Yes, definitely.
How do you make time for relationships with your husband or with friends during a given day or week?
So this is definitely an area that I would love to be better at. I am so lucky that my closest girlfriends are much better at continuing to reach out to me and put things on a calendar. One day that needs to reverse, and it will soon. But some of my best friends are the ones that also continuously throw things on my calendar. Hey, Amanda, does this work out? Can we get together? Whatever. I'm lucky to have very conscientious friends. Jason and I try our best to go out to dinner at least once a month. We have our nanny stay late. My mom used to live here, and work with us. Now she lives in Florida, so we don't have her child care every so often anymore, which, Mom, if you're listening, come back. But it is funny how much more expensive doing things gets when you go out to dinner and pay to go out to dinner and pay for somebody to watch your child when you go out to dinner. And it just is what it is. But we are trying to be better about going out every so often. Sometimes we would try to sneak in like a little happy hour before a nanny was done, but that it's really hard with the work day, or having her stay like an hour or two late, like not necessarily having her still leave at 5, but from like 5 to 6, have her stay just for a little bit longer, but that doesn't always work. So we're trying. That's an area where I need improvement. And I know that. My
face made a jump because I realized I forgot to pay my babysitter for my husband and I going out to dinner on Wednesday. But it really does add up very fast when it like doubles your date night basically sometimes.
It does. It totally does.
You bring up talking about expenses of nannies and childcare in general. How do you and Jason handle finances or budgeting in your household?
So it's interesting because with both stores, we are every last expense is completely accounted for, nailed down. We like to run the stores being kind of scrappy, but not appearing to be scrappy. We like to look like we're not scrappy, but we are. So when it comes to our home, we're not as meticulous because everything is so meticulous with the stores that we try to not overspend. We don't watch everything as tightly as we do because every single dollar at both stores is watched all day long, which is kind of overwhelming at times. But we are trying to save up a little bit to renovate our bathrooms. That being said, whenever we have cash flow that comes in, we typically put it back into the stores because we have continued to grow our businesses over the past couple of years. And with COVID, Junebug took such a massive hit during COVID because we had corporate accounts, weddings, events, all that stuff booked. So we're catching back up. Place and Gather is different because we didn't have all that humongous, we didn't have corporate accounts that we did weekly flower arrangements for in their office buildings that never went back to their office buildings still. Like, we didn't have that to account for. But everything we've made, we've kind of put back into the stores. So now we're starting to set aside a little bit of money here and there to make a couple updates, do some things. We definitely go, like I said, go out to dinner, probably more, I don't know, more than most people. But we just kind of try to not spend where we don't need to.
Mm-hmm.
And we have been trying to save to keep the businesses going. So we just kind of try to be tight with everything, I would say.
That makes sense. And I feel like there's an added burden of being a small business owner with employees and those types of things that you might not think about on like a daily basis.
And I just think, which I don't know, I like to compensate our people. I know how hard people work, and I would rather keep good people and be able to give them an annual raise than take it more for myself, because I know they're doing more work for me, which then in turn, like, well, I would really like to wallpaper this office we're in, but I don't know. Liz has worked so hard. I need to compensate her. Like, that's just my mentality. And I feel like that's still part of the growth of the business. So that's just kind of how it's gone.
That's a really interesting perspective. What is a ball that you consciously let drop in your days, or something you've deprioritized in your life that you acknowledge as a deprioritization?
So my husband is super helpful with household chores and household responsibilities and all that stuff. I now just sometimes look at the laundry and walk right past it. I just can't. So he works from home frequently. So there's a lot of like the laundry that I have kind of let drop, and he has completely sometimes picked up. And a lot of like the other tasks like that, he's the cleaner of our house as well. But after we had our daughter, I had a couple complications. I had her during COVID. It was 2020. And I developed severe postpartum depression, like very severe. And I ended up dropping every ball, intentionally or unintentionally. So luckily, I ended up passing along so much of my work. I passed along my job to our manager. But now, instead of, unless it's a household thing, if it's anything at the stores that I need to drop, I just pass it. If it's something I can't do, I give it to somebody else. So I intentionally delegate so much more in all aspects. I used to be so buttoned up about, I bought everything for the stores with my mom. I was the buyer primarily. Well, I ended up not being able to do that after I had Maya right away. So Liz and now a couple of my other employees help buy. So I have just started, unless it's a real personal responsibility, the ball just gets passed. Otherwise, I'd be dropping them all still.
That's awesome how that experience, while I'm sure extremely hard, kind of opened up the opportunity for you to delegate more and kind of share the load in some of those areas.
Yeah, and it also luckily taught us how strong certain people are at different things. Mm-hmm. So we very much hire people that we do have retail associates. We have a lot of weekend help and stuff like that. But everybody that works for us during the week has another job on top of, if you just are ringing up customers and helping with them. Behind the scenes, you might be updating our website. You might be buying. You might be helping inventory. And having to pass Liz my entire job has then made all of us have to delegate everything to everybody else. So we also hire really strong people that are capable of doing far more jobs within our small business than, we hire people, we watch what they're good at, and then we give them that. Or we focus more tasks in that direction, which has led us to have great merchandising because we see who's really good at it, and then they become in charge of that. But I have delegated so much of my jobs. And sometimes things aren't done exactly the way I would do them, but
That's okay.
well. And a lot of times it's better.
Yeah. That's really cool.
Yeah.
So Amanda, where can people follow along and learn more about you and your businesses?
So we were very active on Instagram. So just at Place and Gather, and then at Junebug Charlestown. And then we have our 2 websites that have the products we have in the store, placeandgather.com and junebugcharlestown.com.
And those will both be listed in the show notes, so anyone listening can find them there and on the adayinherlife.com website. And then Amanda, what is your favorite part of a day in your life?
So I think my favorite part of the day, I would say one of them is when I come home and our daughter is so excited to see me or my husband. That's always a highlight. But also, I like when I get to do something that's creative, which does happen every single day. So obviously when I return and see Maya, but the creativity part of my job is the best, I think.
That's awesome. I love that. I love creativity. And I think it's so important to have in your day and to give you that kind of vibes in your brain.
Totally.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Amanda, so much for being a guest on today's episode. It was so nice to chat with you and to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Awesome.